Nate. So, as promised, I'm going to try and do a really quick and dirty explanation of how to change the iteration of your art. So, look, you're probably already quite familiar with the collection in general, and I guess the idea of how it all works. All the art is created by AI. I essentially make it for people, randoms on Twitter, and generally, I start with something that the subject of the piece is usually something that they like, and then we use the AI to sort of, create something that's supposed to be artistic. So, so basically, what you do in order to change the iteration, you first have to own it. So you obviously own this piece, so you'll be able to change your piece, not a drama. So for this example, the piece that this wallet owns is this one down here. So yeah, basically the subject of this piece is elephant in the style of an Indian space painting. That's a particular style of art. I first I came across it, to be honest, but there you go, you learn something new every day. Now, in order to change it, we need to interact directly with the contract. So the easiest way to find the contract, if you don't already know, is just straight from OpenSea. You scroll down to the details select section, and that's for the piece that you're trying to change. Now, what we want to do is we want to go to the contract address. So if we click this, that will open the contract address on Polygon Scan. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with Polygon Scan or even these types of contracts, but once you're on here, you could view the contract over here on this tab, contract. Basically, this is all the source code for it. A lot of the stuff at the top are imports. So, a lot of them are Open Zeppelin imports. So, but the bit that I wrote or created is sort of right down the bottom here. If I could go back in time, I would change the order because, I spent a lot of time making this really fancy ASCII art for it because I thought that would look cool. And anyway, it sits right down the bottom. I was hoping it was going to sit right up the top. But anyway, next time, I suppose. So in this case, the function that we're going to interact with is change art, right? Now, I'll just explain some of the things with this function and what it does. It takes 3 different parameters, or rather it technically takes 2 parameters, and the fact that it's a payable function means it takes a 3rd parameter. So what that means is you'll be sending a certain amount of matic to run this function. You'll pass the iteration number that you want to change the art to. So there's 11 iterations that you can choose between. The first 10 are sort of, they're all images. And the 11th is actually a video of the AI generating the art sort of from start to finish. So if you were to pick an iteration that was kind of very low, so say 1 or 2, that would be a representation of your art very early on in the piece before it's converged to the final piece that you have at the moment. So, and look, I mean, the main reason why I want to walk through the logic of the function is that, it can be dangerous connecting your wallet to contracts or, interacting with contracts. And a big part of this project for me was to teach myself more about Solidity, to also teach some of my friends and family things about Solidity or things about crypto in general. And I guess the idea of this whole collection is in part for that, an area where it's not especially expensive to sort of play around with these things. Polygon's great because it's, it doesn't cost you $20 to do a transaction. You can do transactions for very small amounts of money, which means you can sort of learn a little bit more along the way. So look, basically, so once we pass the parameters, it does a few checks. So it says there's a function called pause. Like we can, I have access to that, and I can pause the contract so that no one can interact with it or anything like that. So basically, it checks that it's not paused. After that, it checks that you're sending the correct amount of matic that's required to change the art. Now, in this case, it's set to 1 matic. as a change art cost. You know, if Matic goes to the moon and all of a sudden trades at $200 a thing, that probably won't be charged. It won't be set at one Matic. I think the idea is to keep it low so people can play around with things. So first, it checks that you're sending the right amount. And if you send the wrong amount, basically it reverts and it fails. The next thing it checks is to make sure you're choosing an iteration that's possible. So for instance, it's checking to make sure the iteration number that you're selecting is between 1 and 11. You can't, if you picked 100, it'll fail, but you know, you need to pick a number between 1 and 11. This next line basically checks that you own the token that you're trying to change. So if you tried to change someone else's art, it would fail, basically, because you're not the owner. And so this last bit, this is basically checking to see that the art hasn't been vandalized. So that was like another, so that's another interaction that we can do with anyone's art on this set. You don't have to own a piece. You can pick any piece of art in this collection and vandalize it. And essentially I've set that iteration to 12 for that. So anyway, the logic behind it is if someone's vandalized your art, you can't just change the iteration. You need to have that art restored first, and then you can change the iteration, if that makes sense. Anyway, it was a funny piece of logic that I put in originally. Then what it does is it changes a special token ID modifier, which essentially points the token URI at the new or the iteration of art that you've chosen. So all of these iterations, 1 to 11, the video included, they all exist as part of, but they exist in the ether. And this token ID modifier that basically points, it directs, it directs to the right JSON data that represents your art on chain. Now this last thing, change art prestige, that it's sort of like a special counter. So the wallet that you have will get given, basically, it'll go from the first time you do it, the counter will go from 0 to 1. And then the next time you do it, it'll go from 1 to 2. So I guess the idea of that is a long time from now, I sort of anticipate maybe trying to reward people that, you know, like if someone's changed their art 1,000 times and another person's changed them 100 times, there might be, you know, I might try and give access to, you know, future NFT projects on a basis of, you know, like as a way to reward people. So essentially we're recording that you've changed your art at least once, right? And then each time you do it, we'll increase this counter. Okay, so anyway, so this is the function that we're interacting with. Now, I guess we can just cruise on and actually interact with it. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is, if you remember, this is the piece of art that I own, or that the wallet address that I'm using owns. So this is the piece of art that we're going to try and change the iteration of. So what we do, we'll go to the contract. Now you have these buttons here, read contract and write contract. What we're going to do first is we're going to read the contract, and we're going to work out, firstly, what it costs to change your art. So if you go to read contract and you go down to change art cost, that's the cost to change the art in like way or whatever. So anyway, if we click on this, that actually does like a unit conversion. So that's how much it is in way. This is how much it is in Matic. And when we actually enter the values, we enter the values as Matic, not as way. It's just represented as way here. So look, if this ever gets changed, then that would be the best way. Sorry, that would be the best method for checking how much it costs to change your art. At the moment, it's 1 Matic. So what we'll do, so now we know that, we go back to the contract, and what we're going to do is write to the contract. So in order to write to the contract, the first thing we need to do is connect to Web3. In this case, it's just you sort of click this button. I'm using MetaMask, so I'll connect to Polygon Scan using Web3. Hit OK. So now it's connected. What that means is I can interact with any of the functions of the contract sort of through, well, I guess through this interface that Polygon Scan has created. Really fancy websites will sort of, create their own interface and those sorts of things. I haven't done that because I kind of want to show people a little bit more how to interact with things directly with stuff like Etherscan and Polygon Scan, because it means you're actually trying to have a good look at what's going on with the contract and how it really works. So what we'll need to do is go down and find this change art function. So this is the change art function. And we're essentially going to put in some input values. So we already know that it costs 1 matic to change the art. This first thing, which is talking about the new art iteration number. Now this can be anything between 1 and 11, right? So what we're going to put in here is 11. So we're going to change this particular piece of art or the representation of it on chain to be the video. The video is iteration number 11. Now, art token ID to change. So that's the actual token ID that you own. Easiest way to find that, is in this case on OpenSea. You can actually find it directly from the URL. So this piece is token ID 6. Just so you're aware, this is an address. That's actually the contract address. And then this is the ID number 6. So token ID 6 is what we're going to change. For you, it will be different. I think yours is 11 or something like that. Actually, here, I will tell you what it is. Oh, no, sorry. Iteration, so your token ID is number 43. Anyway, but when you get to that, that's what you will need to put in here. So the token ID to change. Now I'm changing number 6. So then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to check that what we put in here is correct. It costs 1 matic to change the art. So we're going to be sending 1 matic plus the gas fees. The new art iteration number is iteration 11. That's what we're trying to change it to. And the token ID we want to change is number 6. And we get that again from this part of the URL. There's another way that you can get it from the contract address. I can show you how to do that later on if that's something you really want to know about. So now we're going to write to the contract. So I'll hit write. My MetaMask is going to pop up, and it's thinking. Okay, so basically it's estimating the amount of gas. So there's a small amount of gas to interact with this. That happens. We're sending our 1 matic. So the total it's estimating it's going to cost is 1 matic plus a little bit of gas. So I'm going to hit confirm. And now I wait. Hopefully that doesn't take too long for it to pop up. Oh, there we go. Transaction confirmed. Lovely jubbly. So now, if this works properly, which I'm hoping it does, I have only tested it once before. If this works properly, what that means now is that this piece on OpenSea, when we refresh the metadata, it should change to the video. Now, OpenSea can be a little bit fickle from time to time and will sometimes take time to refresh the metadata. So anyway, so at the moment, what we're seeing here is, the name, it's the final piece, it's 10 of 10. This will change to video. This will change to video, and this will also change to a video. So to refresh the metadata, we refresh metadata. So it queues, OpenSea queues the metadata refreshing. Check back in a minute or so. I usually find I just refresh this a few times. And wow, that's happened basically straight away. So OpenSea is sort of thinking about it for a tick. It is saying elephant in the style of Indian space painting, and it's a video, right? Some of the description data has changed. because it's now a video and not an image. And because it's a video, it can play. And this video is essentially the AI starting to paint or draw this particular thing, this idea. It's trying to draw an elephant in the style of an Indian space painting. And what happens is it starts not being very close, and as it sort of goes through each iteration, one after the other, it eventually converges on a final result. It does take time, and yeah, eventually the final piece looks like this. And this is a video of the entire process from start to finish. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. What I'm going to quickly do, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this back to its regular iteration, which is the final piece, iteration number 10. And I do that by interacting with the contract again. So this time it's going to be iteration 10. I'm still trying to change art token 6. I'm going to write the transaction. My computer's lagging a little bit because I don't think it likes, it's not especially powerful in the sense of trying to screen film stuff. So actually, let's reject this. Let's change it to iteration 1 so that you can sort of see that there is a bit of a difference. Let's try again. Right, transaction. Now what we should see this change to after that will be a piece that looks very similar to something at the start here. So it'll probably look similar to this. It won't look like it does at the very start, where it's sort of really just trying to work itself out, so to speak. Come on, let's see if I can. I need to confirm this transaction so that it goes through, I guess. Oh. Yeah, this computer really doesn't like filming and doing stuff at the same time. So I don't know. Hopefully the actual video footage at the end won't be terrible, at least for your sake. So now we wait. We are waiting. Just waiting for that transaction to confirm on chain. And then when it does confirm on chain, we can essentially go back here and we will refresh the metadata at that stage. And oh, there we go, it's confirmed on chain. So now I'm going to ask OpenSea to refresh the metadata. And what that does is OpenSea reaches out to, it reaches out to basically the JSON data and requests the updated JSON data from the token URI. That's what they're called anyway, token URIs. So I'll just refresh the page. And this has changed already. So step 1 of 10, just wait for this image to load and you should see it look like a very early iteration of that piece. So yeah, so that's an earlier iteration of it. Right, so yeah, look, things like vandalizing other art works almost exactly the same way. You just interact with a different function here. So, okay, well, just for fun, we're going to vandalize. We'll vandalize this piece just so that you can see what happens there. Now, first thing we need to do is to read the contract. We need to work out how much it costs to vandalize something. So we have change art cost, change art prestige, and vandalize. Sorry, I just did a quick search. Vandalize cost. So if you click on it, again, it takes you to a unit conversion. And what this will be is just 3-matic, right? guess the idea I had behind making vandalizing art cost more than changing it or restoring it is kind of like a dickhead tax. You know, if you're going to vandalize someone's painting, you should pay. It should cost you more than it costs for someone to change it. You know, so this is how much we need to send to the contract. The concept is still very similar. So now we're going to go back to write contract because we're going to need to write to it. I'm just going to search for vandalise art is the function we're after. And so what we're going to do, this is how the payable amount that we send. Remember, we just checked, that's 3 Matic is what it's going to cost us to vandalise this piece of art. And the token we want to vandalise, because we're going to vandalise this one again, I won't vandalise someone else's art just for the moment. That can be something we have fun with later. So token ID 6. I'm going to write that information to the contract. So we're sending 3 Matic, and it's costing us 3 Matic to vandalize token ID number 6. So this is why you're saying 3 Matic and then the little bit of gas that it costs. Confirm. And now what we're going to do is we're going to wait for that to confirm on chain. So hopefully this pops up again. It's been, popping up kind of quickly enough to make it happen. And once it does pop up again, there we go. So we've vandalized the piece. We just refresh the metadata again. So hopefully this happens as quickly as it's been happening before. OpenSea's queued it. It's actually been a bit of a dream how quickly OpenSea has sort of refreshed the metadata in this video. Sometimes I've sat there for ages waiting for things to happen. There we go, vandalized. So it has changed. It's just fetching the vandalized image, which will be a version of the final image that's been vandalized. So in this case, that's how this one's been vandalized. They've all been vandalized slightly different. Essentially, I've just taken the final piece of whatever artwork it is, and I've put this sort of stuff on it. So yeah, they're all kind of different. And once a piece is vandalized, it has to be restored before it can be changed. Again, you do that very similarly. I'll just do that quickly now. Actually, no, I'll just leave that as is. Maybe someone restore art. Here it is. So it's another function. Maybe someone will be nice enough to come along and restore this piece. But again, you send a certain amount of Matic. In this case, I do remember that restore art costs 1 Matic because I made that the same as the changing art. And again, so you send 1 Matic and you send the token ID that you're trying to restore. Again, in this case, that's token ID 6. So yeah, if I sent 1 Matic and token ID 6 and I wrote that to the contract, what that would do is restore that particular piece to its original form of glory, which basically restores it to iteration number 10. Now, one other cool thing, or maybe not a cool thing in relation to this, but something that I did add to everything is, like I said before, it's recording the interactions that you do. So, and how I've been referring to that is kind of as prestige. So, prestige. So we've got 3 kinds of prestige. We've got vandal prestige, we've got change art prestige, and we have restore prestige. So essentially each time your wallet either changes art, restores art, or vandalizes some art, we have a counter that increases against that wallet. So for instance, if you vandalize 10 pieces of art, you will have 10 vandal prestige. If you change your art 10 times, you'll have 10 change art prestige. And if you see someone else's art that's vandalized and you restore it, let's say you've done that twice, you would have 2 restore prestige. So long term, I guess I kind of wanted to turn that part into a bit of a game, or into something where I can reward people that are interacting with the contract, or essentially being active in this NFT collection as it builds over time. The plan's to always have these. Every new piece added to the collection will always be something where someone's interacted with me directly on Twitter, which I guess makes it, there's only so many of these I can create. So from a time point of view, there's not going to be hundreds of thousands of them anytime soon, or probably ever. It will really be a function of how interesting people find this. So for example, so this address where you've just watched me change art twice on this address. So I'm just going to copy my address here. So I'm going to copy the address that we've been using to interact with this piece. So the address that owns this piece, and we can check how much prestige we have. So if we check Vandal prestige, we should have 1, because we've vandalized our art once. So if we query this, this should result in 1. Yep. And for change art prestige, what do we do? We change the art twice, so this should be 2. So we have 2, a value of 2. Now we haven't restored any art with this address. So if I copy this address here and I query restore, this should be 0. Or for instance, if I copy your address, and I can get that by clicking on this, and then I can copy that. So I'm copying this one. So it'll be 0 for you, because you won't have, all 3 will be 0. And I'm really just showing this to you as a sanity check, so that you can see that yours will show up with 0 because you haven't done any interactions yet. So no change art prestige, that will turn to 0. And yeah, so that's about it. So much for it being quick and dirty. I guess it certainly wasn't quick. This is nearly 30 minutes long. Hopefully you find it interesting, I guess. And yeah, if you have other questions, just reach out. If you have friends that want to be a part of the, I guess a part of the project, or a part of this collection as a whole, feel free to have them reach out. I do want to build it over time. So yeah, anyway, all the best. Cheers. See ya.